Sandra Bullock confessed when Keanu Reeves was searching for love. The night was quiet, yet inside Keanu Reeves there was a storm. No one could see. He had spent years surrounded by cameras, fans, and bright lights. But when the lights went out and the crowd was gone, he often felt an emptiness he could not explain. For so long, people saw him as the man who carried strength, patience, and kindness. But deep inside, he was searching for something simple, something almost every heart longs for, someone to love and someone who could truly understand him. In those quiet moments, Keanu asked himself the same question again and again. What if love had always been close, yet he had never seen it clearly? What if the answer to his loneliness was hidden in someone he already knew? Someone who had walked through life beside him, quietly, patiently, waiting for the right time. The world knew Keanu and Sandra Bullock as two stars who once shared a magical bond on screen. But behind that screen, there was a friendship that lasted through decades. They had laughed together, supported each other through storms, and carried unspoken respect for one another. Yet there was always something left unsaid, something both felt but never confessed. On a calm evening, after weeks of searching within himself, Keanu found courage to share his truth with close friends. He admitted that he was finally ready to look for love, not in the noise of fame, but in the quiet honesty of a real connection. This confession spread quietly among people who cared about him. When Sandra heard it, her heart skipped. It was as if the words had been waiting for her all along. She remembered the times Keanu stood by her side when she was at her lowest. He never judged, never demanded, only offered kindness. She thought about how rare it was to find someone who truly understood the meaning of humility and respect in a world where both were fading away. She could not ignore the truth inside her any longer. The hook of this story was beginning to unfold. Keanu was searching for love, and Sandra carried feelings that had lived in silence for years. But the path forward was not simple. Sandra was afraid. What if confessing her heart destroyed the friendship they had carefully protected? What if Keanu was searching for love, but not in her direction? Her mind filled with doubts, but her heart refused to stay silent. Then came the twist, an unexpected moment that none of them had planned. Sandra was invited to a private dinner, a small gathering of close friends where Keanu would also be present. She almost didn't go, fearing her emotions would betray her. Yet something stronger pulled her there, a quiet voice telling her this. Night could change everything. The dinner began with laughter, warm stories, and old memories. Keanu's smile was calm but different that night. There was a depth in his eyes like he was carrying a secret. Sandra noticed it, and she felt her chest tighten. As the evening went on, a gentle silence filled the room. Keanu stood up and spoke, softly. He said he had spent years giving everything to his career and his fans, but now he wanted to give his heart to someone who could walk beside him in truth. The room fell silent. His words were simple, yet heavy with meaning. Sandra's hands trembled. She wanted to speak, but fear held her still. The moment stretched longer than she could bear. Finally, with courage that rose from deep inside, she whispered to herself, "If not now, then never." She stood, her voice soft but steady. She confessed that for years she had carried feelings she could never speak, afraid of ruining what they had, but unable to deny the way her heart always found its home when she was near him. The room froze. Keanu's eyes locked with hers, and, in that moment, nothing else mattered. The unspoken truth they both had buried for so long was finally standing in the open. And yet, the story was far from over. Because confessing love was only the beginning. What would follow was a journey filled with trials, misunderstandings, sacrifices, and powerful moments that would test them both. The world around them was watching, but the question was simple. Would they choose courage over fear, love over silence? This was the first step in a story where respect, humility, resilience, and kindness would guide them through the storms of life. The silence after confession. The air in the room was heavy, almost too heavy to breathe. After Sandra's confession, the laughter that had filled the dinner moments earlier had faded into silence. Everyone at the table looked at them, but no one dared to interrupt. It was as if time had stopped, as if the universe itself was waiting. For Keanu's response, Sandra's heart raced. Her hands were trembling slightly, hidden under the table. She had carried these words for years, locked away where no one could see. Now they were out in the open, fragile and unprotected. She feared they would shatter in front of her eyes if Keanu rejected them. Keanu did not speak right away. His eyes were fixed on Sandra, soft but unreadable. He seemed to be searching for something, as if weighing the meaning of her words against the life they had shared. His silence was powerful, almost unbearable. Yet in that silence, Sandra felt something she had never felt before: hope. Hook 1. The truth was spoken, but silence stood in the way of an answer. Finally, Keanu took a deep breath. His voice was calm, almost too calm, when he said, "You don't know how long I've been waiting to hear those words." A wave of emotion washed over Sandra, but it wasn't the end of the moment. It was only the beginning. Keanu leaned closer, his voice quiet, his eyes steady. He explained how he had always admired her, respected her, and cherished her friendship more than anything. He admitted there were nights when he thought of her as more than a friend, but fear had kept him silent too. Hook 2. Two hearts had always carried the same secret, but fear had buried it deep. For the first time, Sandra saw the truth in his eyes, the same truth she had carried for years. Her heart swelled, but just as quickly, doubts began to rise again. Was this real? Could their bond survive such a change? The evening ended with a quiet understanding between them. They didn't rush into promises. They didn't let the weight of the moment turn into sudden decisions. Instead, they allowed the silence to guide them. But when they said goodbye that night, their hug lingered longer than usual, filled with unspoken words and emotions that both were finally ready to explore. The days that followed were filled with new emotions. For Sandra, every message from Keanu felt different now, warmer, deeper. For Keanu, every memory of her carried new meaning. He thought about the way she laughed, the way she carried herself with grace, and the way she always lifted people around her with kindness. Hook 3. Once the truth is revealed, every small moment carries a new meaning. Yet life has a way of testing love, even in its earliest steps. Just as Sandra began to believe this was the start of something beautiful, she received unexpected news. An old rumor about her and another actor resurfaced in the media, creating a storm of gossip. Sandra ignored it at first. She had faced these storms many times before, but this time it was different. Now, Keanu was part of the story. Suddenly, headlines began to twist her confession into something it wasn't. Whispers filled the internet, suggesting her words at the dinner were not real, only a reaction to the loneliness of aging stars. The cruelty of gossip hit harder than ever, not because Sandra doubted herself, but because she feared it might change the way Keanu saw her. Hook 4. When the world twists your truth, will the person you love still believe you? Keanu saw the headlines. 2. Friends sent him articles, and strangers filled his social media with questions. For years, he had been known as the man who lived with humility and silence, avoiding scandals and attention. Now, he was standing in the middle of one. Instead of pulling away, Keanu made a choice that surprised everyone. He called Sandra late at night, his voice steady, and said, "Don't let them break you. Don't let them break us." His words carried strength. They reminded Sandra of the man she always admired, the man who lived by respect, humility, and resilience. Her fear began to fade. She realized that if they wanted to walk this path together, they would have to face storms, not just quiet sunsets. Hook 5. True love is not proven in silence. It is proven in storms. Still, doubt lingered in the background. Would the pressure of the outside world be too heavy for them? Could they find love not in the perfect world people imagined, but in the flawed, messy truth of real life? As the night ended, Sandra sat by her window, looking at the city lights, her heart filled with both fear and hope. She whispered to herself that love is not about waiting for the world to be quiet. Love is about standing together even when the noise grows louder. And somewhere across the city, Keanu sat in silence, too, reflecting on the same thought. Both of them knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would test them in ways they had never imagined. The weight of the world. The storm of rumors did not calm down. Days passed, yet the headlines grew louder. Magazines printed pictures of Sandra and Keanu side by side from years ago, twisting them into stories that were never real. Gossip shows debated their friendship, some calling it beautiful, others calling it desperate. It was no longer just a quiet confession between two people. It was a story the whole world wanted to own. Sandra felt the pressure first. Every time she stepped outside, cameras followed. Questions were thrown at her, sharp and cruel. Is it true you confessed because you were lonely? Are you trying to use Keanu's name for attention? She smiled politely, but inside her chest, the questions cut deep. Hook 1. When the world doubts your truth, will your own heart still believe in it? Keanu, on the other hand, chose silence. He avoided interviews, he turned down events, and he tried to protect the quiet space he valued most. But silence, too, can become a story. People began to whisper that his silence meant shame, that maybe he didn't feel the same for Sandra. When Sandra saw these whispers, her heart sank. She knew Keanu's silence was his way of protecting peace, not rejection. Yet, she also wondered, would his silence one day become a wall between them? The turning point came one evening when Sandra received an invitation to a charity event. It was an event both she and Keanu had supported in the past. She almost declined, afraid of the cameras, but then she thought of Keanu's words. Don't let them break us. She decided to go. When she arrived, the lights flashed brighter than ever. The red carpet was filled with voices calling her name. And then, in the middle of the noise, she saw him, Keanu, calm and steady, waiting for her at the entrance. Hook 2. Sometimes, courage is not in words, but in standing beside someone when the world is watching. They walked inside together. Whispers turned into gasps. It was the first time they had faced the world side by side since her confession. Sandra felt her fear melt a little as Keanu's quiet presence gave her strength. Inside the hall, speeches began, lights dimmed and music filled the room. Yet Sandra could not focus. Her mind raced with doubts. Then came the unexpected twist. During the event, a reporter boldly asked them in front of everyone, "Is your friendship turning into love?" The room froze. All eyes turned toward them. Sandra's heart pounded. She wanted to answer, but before she could speak, Keanu took the microphone. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. He said, "The world may see rumors. The world may create stories. But what matters is respect, kindness, and the truth between two people. Sandra is one of the most genuine souls I've ever known. Whatever path we choose, it will not be shaped by rumors. It will be shaped by honesty." Hook 3. When the world demands answers, sometimes the most powerful response is truth spoken with calm dignity. Applause filled the room. Sandra's eyes filled with tears, not because of what Keanu said, but because of how he said it, with kindness, humility, and strength. For the first time, she felt that maybe they could face the storm together, But as the night went on, a new challenge quietly appeared. In the crowd was someone from Sandra's past, a man she once cared about deeply, who had also faced rejection and loss. His eyes followed her with something between longing and resentment. After the event, he approached Sandra privately. His words were sharp. "So now you choose Keanu? After all these years, you suddenly find your heart?" Sandra was stunned. She had not expected old wounds to return on the same night she was trying to build something new. Hook 4. The past has a way of returning, especially when the future begins to open its door. Sandra tried to explain, but the man left before she could. Keanu noticed the tension in her eyes as they walked out together. He asked softly if she was all right, but she only gave a quiet nod. That night, alone in her home, Sandra's thoughts became a storm. She feared the past would haunt her new beginning. She feared Keanu would hear twisted stories and doubt her. Meanwhile, Keanu sat in his apartment thinking about the weight on Sandra's shoulders. He admired her resilience, but he also knew how much scars from the past could hurt. He asked himself if he was strong enough to help carry her pain, not just her joy. Hook 5. Love is not only about sharing laughter, it is about carrying each other's scars without fear. The story of their confession was no longer theirs alone. It had become a battle against rumors, past shadows, and the weight of the world. Yet both of them, sitting miles apart, shared the same silent thought. Love was never meant to be easy, but perhaps the hardest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. When the past knocks on the door, the night after the charity event left Sandra restless. She tried to sleep, but her thoughts replayed the words of the man from her past. His eyes carried pain, his voice carried resentment, and it awakened old memories she had buried for years. She remembered the days when she once believed in love, with him, only to watch it fall apart because of broken trust. As she stared out her window at the quiet city, she realized something troubling. The world was already watching her and Keanu, waiting for them to stumble. If the past rose again, it would give people more reason to doubt their truth. Hook 1. Sometimes the greatest test of love is not the noise of strangers, but the return of ghosts from the past. The next morning, Sandra's phone buzzed with a message. Her heart sank when she saw his name. The man from her past. His words were short, but sharp. "We need to talk." Sandra felt torn. If she ignored him, rumors might grow. If she met him, she feared Keanu would misunderstand. Still, she decided that silence would not solve anything. She agreed to meet him in a quiet cafe away from the city lights. When she walked in, he was already waiting. His face was tired, his eyes heavy with regret. He began speaking quickly, saying that he had made mistakes, that he had lost her once, and could not bear to see her with someone else. Hook 2. When regret returns, it often demands answers that hearts are not ready to give. Sandra listened quietly, her mind heavy. She realized he was not only hurt by her confession to Keanu, but also by the fact that she had moved forward while he remained trapped in the past. She spoke gently, reminding him that love cannot be forced, that kindness cannot grow from fear. Yet, what she didn't know was that someone nearby had taken a photo of their meeting. Within hours, the picture appeared online. The headlines twisted the story again. Sandra Bullock caught in secret meeting while Keanu waits. When Keanu saw the photo, his heart sank. He trusted Sandra, but the image stirred old fears inside him. He had lived through loss before, through betrayals and disappointments. He asked himself quietly if he was ready to walk into a storm this heavy again. Hook 3. Even the strongest trust can tremble when shadows are painted as truth. That evening, Keanu didn't call Sandra. His silence was louder than words. Sandra, seeing the headlines herself, felt her stomach turn. She knew the world was against them, but she hadn't expected the battle to begin so soon. She tried calling Keanu, but he didn't answer. Instead, Keanu spent the night walking the streets alone. The city lights blurred around him as he thought of Sandra's face, her confession, her laughter, and now the image of her sitting with another man. He wanted to believe in her completely, but his scars whispered doubts he couldn't silence. Hook 4. Love is not only tested by truth, it is tested by silence that follows doubt. Finally, the next morning, Keanu answered her call. His voice was calm but distant. He asked her softly, "Why didn't you tell me?" Sandra's eyes filled with tears. She explained everything: the message, the meeting, the attempt to bring closure to a past that refused to stay buried. She begged him to believe that her heart was with him and no one else. Keanu listened quietly, and after a long silence, he said something that pierced her heart. "I want to believe you, Sandra, but I've seen how the world breaks people. I've seen how trust can vanish in a second." Hook 5. The real battle in love is not between people, but between trust and fear inside the heart. Their conversation ended without answers. Sandra sat in her home, tears sliding down her face, wondering if her confession had come too late. Keanu sat in his apartment, staring at the floor, wondering if his fear would destroy something beautiful before it even began. But then came a twist neither of them expected. Later that night, a video surfaced from the cafe. It showed the full truth. Sandra sitting across from her past, her words firm and her voice steady as she said, "You have to let me go. My heart is no longer here." The world saw it. The headlines shifted. For once, the storm that tried to tear them apart now showed the truth that could bring them closer. Keanu watched the video in silence. His chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with relief. Sandra had stood firm. She had chosen truth, even when the world doubted her. Hook 6. Sometimes the same storm that tries to break you becomes the proof of your strength. Keanu called her immediately. His voice was soft, filled with emotion. "I saw it," he whispered. "You don't know how much strength that took." Sandra cried quietly, but her tears were different now. They were not from pain, but from the weight of being finally understood. And in that moment, though the world was still loud, their hearts grew a little quieter, a little stronger, ready for what was still to come. The past had tried to return, but instead of breaking them, it revealed the truth of where their hearts truly belonged. The choice between fear and courage, the video from the cafe changed everything. For the first time, the world saw Sandra's strength clearly. She was not chasing attention. She was not caught in confusion. She was facing her past with courage, saying goodbye to it in front of everyone. For many, it was inspiring. For others, it was fuel for more gossip. But for Keanu, the video was a light in the storm. He saw Sandra's honesty, her resilience, and her refusal to let lies define her. Yet, as comforting as that was, the noise around them did not fade. In fact, it grew louder. Hook 1. Sometimes truth shines brighter, but the brighter it shines, the bigger the shadows that gather around it. Soon after, producers and studios began calling. Offers came in for Sandra and Keanu to appear together in interviews, shows, even movies. The world wanted to see them, not only as stars, but as a story of love. And with every call came a hidden trap: the pressure to perform, to prove, to turn their private journey into public entertainment. Sandra felt torn. She wanted to protect what they were building, to keep it pure. But she also knew that refusing might make people think they were hiding something. Keanu, as always, leaned toward silence. He believed love was not meant for the stage, but for the quiet moments in between. Yet silence, once again, threatened to create distance between them. Hook 2. Love must decide. Will it live in the light of the crowd or in the quiet of two souls? One evening, they met in Keanu's home. The city lights glowed outside the window, but the air inside was heavy with unspoken questions. Sandra sat on the couch, her eyes tired. Keanu sat across from her, his hands folded. "We can't avoid this forever," Sandra said softly. "The world wants answers. If we stay silent, they'll keep inventing stories. If we speak, we risk losing the peace we have." Keanu looked at her, his eyes calm but pained. "What do you want, Sandra? Do you want us to become a story for them? Or do you want us to remain a story for us?" Her heart ached. She wanted both, to live openly and honestly, but also to protect the sacredness of what they shared. Hook 3. Sometimes love is not about right or wrong. It is about choosing which part of your heart you are willing to risk. Before either could answer, the phone buzzed. It was a call from the charity organization they had supported. A new event was coming, bigger than the last, with the world's eyes watching. They wanted Keanu and Sandra to stand together as symbols of kindness, resilience, and hope. It was not just about them now, it was about people who looked up to them, who believed in them. Keanu sighed deeply. He had always avoided the spotlight outside of his work. But he also knew that sometimes humility is not in staying silent, but in using your voice for something bigger than yourself. That night, he told Sandra, maybe it's not about us proving our love. Maybe it's about showing the world that love, respect, and kindness can survive storms. Hook 4. The greatest love stories are not only for the hearts involved, they become lights for those still searching in the dark. They agreed to attend the event together, but as the date approached, another twist struck. Sandra received a threatening letter at her home. The words were cruel, written by someone who claimed she was destroying Keanu's image. She hid the letter at first, afraid to show it to him, but the fear lingered in her chest. The night before the event, Keanu noticed her silence. He asked gently, "What's wrong?" Tears filled her eyes as she finally showed him the letter. His expression hardened, but his voice stayed calm. "They think fear will break us," he said, "but fear only wins if we let it." Hook 5. The measure of love is not how it survives peace. It is how it stands unbroken in the face of fear. The next evening, they walked onto the stage together. The hall was filled with leaders, stars, and cameras from every corner of the world. As they stood side by side, the crowd fell silent, waiting. Keanu spoke first, his voice steady. "In life, storms come to test us. Sometimes they take everything away, but sometimes they reveal what truly matters. Kindness, humility, courage, and love." Sandra's voice followed, soft but strong. "Love is not a weakness. It is not a distraction. It is strength, the kind of strength that can heal, inspire, and protect. No rumor, no lie, no fear can take that away if we choose to stand together." Applause erupted. People rose to their feet. For a moment, the noise of the world was replaced with respect, admiration, and silence filled with meaning. Hook 6. When love speaks with truth, even the loudest crowd has no choice but to listen. But as they left the stage, neither of them knew that the greatest challenge was still waiting, not from the world outside, but from within their own hearts. When silence turns into forever, the night after the charity event should have been peaceful, but for Keanu and Sandra, it was anything but. The applause still echoed in their ears, yet silence filled their homes. Both of them knew that speaking to the world was one thing, but living with the truth of their hearts was another. Keanu sat by his window, staring at the stars. He had spent his whole life giving to others, through his films, through quiet acts of kindness, through his humility. Now, for the first time, he was asked to give his heart fully to someone, and the weight of that choice pressed deeply on him. Sandra, in her own home, held her phone in her hand, wondering if she should call him. She feared that after everything, doubt might still linger in his mind. She feared he would retreat into the silence he had always used to protect himself. Hook 1. Love may survive storms, but the real test is whether it can survive silence. The following day, Sandra made a decision. She would not wait anymore. She went to Keanu's home without warning, her heart pounding as she stood at his door. When he opened it, his eyes widened in surprise, but behind the surprise was something else. Relief. They sat together in the quiet of his living room. At first, no words came. Then finally, Sandra spoke, her voice trembling but strong. "Keanu, I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what could have been. I don't care about the headlines, the rumors, or the whispers. I care about us. And if you feel the same, we have to stop letting fear speak louder than love." Keanu's eyes softened. He took a long breath, as if gathering years of unspoken words. Then, in his calm voice, he said, "Sandra, I've spent my life running from the pain of loss. I thought silence would protect me. But now I see it only kept me from love, and I don't want to run anymore." Hook 2. The moment of truth comes not when love is confessed, but when fear is finally defeated. Tears filled Sandra's eyes. For the first time, they were not holding back. Their hands touched, and in that simple gesture, the weight of years lifted. It was not dramatic, not loud. It was quiet, honest, and real. But even in this tender moment, life had one more twist prepared for them. A phone call interrupted the silence. It was Sandra's manager, warning her that a new wave of rumors was spreading again, this time suggesting that her entire story with Keanu was a publicity stunt. Sandra hung up, her heart sinking. She looked at Keanu, afraid this would push him back into doubt. Instead, he surprised her. He smiled gently and said, "Let them talk. They don't know us. We know us. And that is enough." Hook 3. True love is proven not when the world believes, but when two hearts believe in each other. From that day forward, Sandra and Keanu stopped hiding. They didn't make dramatic announcements. They didn't give the world every detail. Instead, they lived their truth quietly but openly. Dinners shared, events attended together, moments of kindness offered to the people around them. The world slowly began to understand. Their love was not built on spectacle. It was built on respect, resilience, humility, and kindness. The very values that had guided their lives separately, now guiding them together. One evening, months later, Sandra and Keanu walked along a quiet beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. The waves crashed softly at their feet. Sandra looked at him, her heart full, and whispered, "I'm glad I finally told you." Keanu smiled, his voice steady. "And I'm glad I finally listened." Hook 4. Sometimes the greatest stories end not with fireworks, but with two souls finally finding peace in each other. As the sun disappeared into the horizon, they walked hand in hand, not as two stars, not as two people, chased by cameras, but as two hearts that had finally chosen love over fear, truth over silence. Their story became more than headlines. It became a quiet reminder to the world that love is not about perfection, but about courage. It is not about avoiding storms, but about standing together when the storms come.